and happy Feel Good Friday on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you up until 5:30 today. That's right, we're off a little bit early because of some East Coast Royals baseball as they start a 3-game weekend set with the New York Yankees, who are not nearly as bad as the Royals, but the vibes are about as bad as they've ever been for the Yankees. They have not been in sole possession of last place in their division this late in the year since 1990. That was 4 years before I was born. And that would be what now, 33 years ago? Yeah. So it's been a while. Been quite a while since the Yankees have been that bad. Maybe the Royals will have some positive momentum this weekend, or maybe they will fare the way they've fared against most other crappy teams this year, and they'll end up losing the series. But that is coming up tonight. Pregame at 5:30, first pitch just after 6 on the Royals Radio Network right here on 580 WIBW. But we've got a full show to get to for you between now and 5:30 today. A lot from the Kansas City Chiefs in training camp today. An interesting piece from The Athletic about the biggest concerns for every team in the AFC West. The hardest team to come up with 1-4 is the Chiefs, because what concerns you about the Kansas City Chiefs right now? Not a whole lot. We will try to come up with something, and we'll get to what Randy Mueller of The Athletic said about the rest of the division as well. Matt Derrick is going to join us later this hour for our weekly Chiefs Insider on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. We will also hear from Mark Donovan. No, you heard some of that earlier today with Jake and Fulton, but we will hear from Mark Donovan some really interesting stuff about the upcoming season, about what is going to happen to Arrowhead Stadium, prep for the World Cup, and much more. That's coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today. Got some news and notes from around college football media days. The SEC wrapping up this week, Pac-12 media day today. Unfortunately, don't have time to dive into Conference USA, which was also today. Really a shame there.
Man, that's bad scheduling on their part.
Yeah, really.
But you know what Conference USA has? A media deal.
A TV deal?
Yeah.
It might be easier to find Western Kentucky football on TV this year than Oregon. So keep that in mind. We'll get to that, though, in the 4 o'clock hour. Plus, we've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines, What is Wrong with You, and Change My Mind later this hour. If my story today does not beat our current weekly champion, I think our weekly champion has a chance to win the month. I have a story that is so bleeped up, I almost didn't share it.
If that's the starting point.
Yeah, it's it'll make your skin crawl, possibly for multiple reasons. So we'll get to that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour today.
Great, can't wait.
Yeah, it's a lot. I will just give you that little preview of that. Don't forget, you can be a part of the show. In fact, we would love for you to be a part of the show. 785-272-9429 is our text line number. And of course, you can hop on to the YouTube comment section as well. YouTube channel is called, you know it, Sports on 580 WIBW. So hop on over there, jump into the comment section. You can watch the live video stream of the show today. But we start with the reigning Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. Training camp, not quite in full swing yet. It's mostly just rookies, newcomers, and the quarterbacks who are on site so far. But NFL fever is underway. We are getting more and more news out from around the league. We are getting more and more stories, storylines, narratives from around the NFL as teams continue to progressively report. And today, over at The Athletic, Randy Mueller, or actually this was earlier this week, but at The Athletic, Randy Mueller, former longtime front office personnel man around the NFL, has had a lot of jobs over a lot of years. He is trying to find the biggest concern from a general manager's perspective for every team in the AFC West. Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. If you are the GM, so if you are Tom Telesco, or who's in Denver now? Is it still Peyton?
Yeah, it's George Payton.
Okay, I couldn't remember if he had gotten canned or not. George Payton, whatever his name is, he's got a Z in his name, not McDaniels, the GM there. Is it Ziegler? It might be Ziegler in Oakland. Well, I'm sorry, Las Vegas. And then obviously Brett Veach. What is your biggest worry as we start training camp and as we go into the season? We will get to the rest of the division here in just a moment. But the hardest one to come up with is one for the Kansas City Chiefs. And as Mueller writes, the Chiefs decision makers should be sleeping easy and enjoying their Italian vacations. I'm not going to waste much time here. Maybe they could add a veteran wide receiver. They're banking on youth at the position. Usually that comes with some growing pains. But both, even on bad days, speaking of Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, some of the guys they'll rely on to have big roles, they still make opponents defend you differently. If the Chiefs' defense can continue to be average, this team will rise to the top. Every team has to manage its way through a 17-game season, and we are all 3 weeks of injuries or craziness away from a mutiny. But this team, like the Eagles in the NFC, is fairly set on paper. Yeah, I mean, you get a bunch of injuries and suddenly things feel a whole lot different. I think the Chiefs defense was better than average last season. I don't know what their DVOA was off the top of my head, but at least by the end of the year, that felt like a defense that was certainly above average.
It was definitely better in the double-digit weeks and the postseason than it was to start the year, and that's not by accident. That was kind of by design because they were really young in some spots, and it took them a while, I think, to congeal in the way that you envisioned. But once they did, that was a defense that played really, really well and was a defense. We talk about this distinction all the time. You win with and win because of. We talk about it in relation to quarterbacks, but I think you can talk about it because we know the Chiefs have the quarterback you win because of. Do they have a defense you can win with? And I think they do. And I think they certainly did down the stretch last season. They certainly did in the playoffs.
So I'm not really worried about that part of it, to be frank with you. So the biggest front office concern right now for the Kansas City Chiefs, I think I'm going to lean with the receiver room, and it's not even an immediate issue. Like, as far as this year's roster is concerned, I don't have a worry. Quarterback is set. Running backs are set. And it sounds like Pacheco is going to be fully healthy. Great. Awesome. Offensive line. Receivers for this year. Your tight end room. All perfectly set. Defense. You've, I think, improved your defensive line. You've added more talent on the edges. Extremely important. Extremely valuable. Good. Your linebackers are probably, as a unit, as good as anyone in the AFC. Your defensive backfield, yeah, pretty young, but really talented. The upside, absolutely right there. I don't really have any current roster concerns. The only thing I can think of from a long-term perspective is I think there is still a just sort of a big question mark hanging over the wide receiver room. MVS is under contract through next season, but you can cut him for nothing after this year. Kadarius Toney is signed for a couple years, but not long-term. Sky Moore, okay, sure, you've got him for a few more years, but you still don't know exactly what you have. I think he'll have a good year, but you're still wondering what you have there. Watson is not really a difference maker. Rashee Rice, I think, is probably going to end up being fine, but showing up to your first camp out of shape is not especially good. Richie James is a one-year guy, and then after that, it's just a bunch of lottery tickets. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad room. In fact, I definitely don't think it's a bad room. I think you just look at it and say, depending on what does or does not happen this year, we may have to spend a little bit more attention addressing that in the future. That is the best I can give you. That is a stretch, and that's the best I can give you for this roster. It has been built so evenly and so properly that they're going to be a contender without question for the next several years.
So I think the biggest question I have with regards to the Chiefs wide receivers is how much of the passing game, how much of the scheme is oriented around Kadarius Toney's skill set and him being able to be on the field, play 17 games, and play a number one receiver's workload of snaps. Because we heard rumblings in the offseason that was how the Chiefs viewed Kadarius Toney, as a number one wide receiver, as the guy who was going to be at the wide receiver position, their primary option. And that's an important distinction when you're talking about the Chiefs passing game, because Travis Kelce is obviously the number one target in the passing game. But among the wide receivers, it was going to be Kadarius Toney, who was atop the depth chart. And Toney doesn't look the part. right? Like you look at Kadarius Toney physically, he does not look like a number one wide receiver. But then again, neither did Tyreek Hill. He was a number one wide receiver because he was faster than everybody else. He had good ball skills in the air. He is great at adjusting, and he was able to make plays happen after the catch. Kadarius Toney is not Tyreek Hill, but he has some similarities when it comes to, like, nobody's exactly like Tyreek Hill speed-wise, like at his peak speed, but Kadarius Toney is faster than just about everybody else he gets on the field with, and Toney is shifty in open spaces. You see that with his punt return abilities, and has that ability to make things happen in the yak after a catch, yards after the catch. And I also think that he showed, albeit in brief flashes, the ability to maybe make some plays on some balls down the sideline in the air in a way that Tyreek Hill used to be able for the Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs see the opportunity to recreate some of the dimensions in the passing game that Tyreek Hill gave them with Kadarius Toney. How much are they leaning on that? I don't know that the Chiefs have to lean heavily on that, but how much are they leaning on Kadarius Toney being able to bring a dimension to the passing game that we don't know if he can bring to the passing game for 17 weeks? And if he can't, then what does that do to the rest of the passing game? Does that put too much on guys who maybe aren't ready to produce at the level that they need to produce at? Is that too much on MVS? Is that too much on the rookie Rashee Rice? Is that too much on Sky Moore to ask them to see their target share, their workload, and the routes they run, the place that they find themselves in the scheme, having to become enhanced or change in some way if Kadarius Toney is hurt, or if Kadarius Toney, even healthy, isn't able to stand up to the rigors of being wide receiver one for 17 weeks in the regular season? So that's the question I have. I don't even know that that's a concern, though, because I believe in the athleticism.
Right.
And like, if I sit here and say, well, I don't know if he can stay healthy, it's football. Like, injuries happen, and everybody would be in a bad way if their number one wide receiver got hurt, or if their quarterback got hurt. Like, everybody's that old great line from, I think it was Tom Moore, the offensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts, when they used to ask him, well, why don't you run more? Why don't you run your backups more? Why don't you give more reps to your backup when you have Peyton Manning? And Tom Moore used to say, if we lose Peyton Manning, and he would use a different non-radio friendly word,
right?
But he would say, if Peyton Manning is hurt, we're screwed, and we don't practice screwed. So I don't think you can practice screwed or do anything about screwed if you're the Chiefs. But I do want to see if Toney is up to the task. I think he is. I think the Chiefs certainly believe he is. But if he's not, then how does that change the dimension of the passing game?
We've got one in from Vance on YouTube. I think this is a good question. If Travis goes down, Travis Kelce, can Blake Bell and Jody Fortson even come close to filling that gap in the passing game? And I do think that is the one most intriguing roster building question that the Chiefs have, is that without the number one wide receiver, the true WR1, what does it look like if you suddenly don't have your best pass catching option? And I think part of that is, in a sick way, almost a little fun. Like, what does it look like when you don't have any elite players in your pass catching core? What can Mahomes do with that? Because we've seen the receiver core at its worst 2 years ago when guys were banged up and they were, Marcus Kemp was actually playing on offense. And we've seen it obviously with Hill and Kelce, just Hill, just Kelce, whatever. But if Kelce goes down, what does that look like? I don't know that I'm necessarily worried about that, but it is an intriguing hypothetical. What do you do? How does the play calling change? Because obviously, I like Blake Bell. He can't do what Travis Kelce does. I like Jody Fortson. He can't do what Travis Kelce does. Even if you bounce Noah Gray back out from fullback or H-back to a true inline tight end, like his skill set as a pass catcher, but he's not Travis Kelce. Nobody is. So that is an interesting thought. What happens if you miss time from Kelce, who has been wildly durable, almost incredibly durable ever since his first year when he missed the entire season pretty much. But he's older, and he plays a very physical position, and more teams have tried, albeit they've failed a lot, but have tried to take him out of games by just hitting him as much as possible. It hasn't worked, but that also wears on you physically. So I don't know that you can come up with a straight answer for that, because, I mean, how do you predict injuries or predict what happens if there is an injury? But it is an interesting thought, at least.
Kelce getting injured is one of those we don't practice screwed kind of things,
Mhm.
like, because he is so unique and he is so great. And if he goes down, you don't replace him, at least not right away. The Chiefs haven't acted like a team that is in a hurry to start laying the groundwork for life after Travis Kelce.
Mhm.
You know, we talked about going into the draft how, you know, there's some really interesting tight ends at the end of this first round. If the Chiefs wanted to draft an heir apparent, a successor to Travis Kelce, they could get one. They didn't have to necessarily do it in the first round. And as it turned out, our favorite guy, my favorite guy anyway, Dalton Kincaid, they never got the chance. Kincaid went before the Chiefs pick. But there were opportunities day one, day two of this NFL draft to go out and get a tight end prospect that was regarded as somebody who could come in and play right away. And the Chiefs opted not to go in that direction. Mm-hmm. And you would think that if the Chiefs were concerned, if they looked at Travis Kelce and said, oh man, it is untenable to imagine what happens if this is the year the decline begins for Travis Kelce, that we're going to leave ourselves totally exposed on offense if this is the year the decline starts, or this is the year he gets hurt, or whatever it is. We have got to address this tight end room. No, they looked at what they had and said, now we'll run it back. We'll run it back with Noah Gray. In fact, we'll be more creative with Noah Gray. We can move him around because we've also got Blake Bell coming back, and we've also got Jody Fortson, who has been a red zone target when he's been on the field. Unfortunately, it's been for like a total of 15 minutes, but when he's been on the field has shown that maybe there's the potential to be a red zone target, a red zone factor. So that, I think, should give you some optimism that nobody knows a team's personnel better than that team. And if the Chiefs don't feel like they've got to start really laying heavy groundwork to upgrade their tight end position or further fortify their tight end position, then I think that they feel like they're in really good shape with the guys they have, because again, nobody is more keenly aware of how important Travis Kelce is to that operation than Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Brett Veach.
As for the rest of the AFC West, in this piece from Randy Mueller over at The Athletic, the biggest GM perspective concerns each team has, I'll just go in order of how they were listed in the piece. The Broncos, the gist of his writing here, I'm not going to read you his whole thing, it's 4 paragraphs long. Will the new additions that Sean Payton mostly spearheaded bringing in, will they actually help the team get better? That includes the offensive line, Mike McGlinchey. How much does he actually help them? Mueller takes a lot of time actually breaking down Marvin Mims, who we here loved and watched him at Oklahoma play like an All-American for a couple years.
I think he's a good player. Is he a needle mover?
Randy Mueller, not a huge fan, said he doesn't think that he, at least on paper and what he saw from Oklahoma, seems like that guy. So essentially those two, among others, did they do enough, and did they add the right pieces to actually help them get better? I would argue that honestly, and I understand the exercise here and the perspective that we're playing this from the front office, from the GM perspective, but in terms of actual on-the-field success this year, I feel like nothing really matters outside of how well does Russell Wilson play. Because I don't know if we even have a great grasp of how the rest of the team played last year, because losing Javonte Williams obviously was awful, but Nate Hackett was a moron.
Yes, and Bozo the Clown coaching that football team.
And Wilson was so bad.
So that's, I think, the bet the Broncos are making is that they're not actually, what they end up winning for? Were they 4-13 or 5-12? I think they're 5-12.
I think 5-12.
But I think the Broncos are betting on them being a lot further away from that talent-wise and a lot closer to the middle talent-wise, because a lot of the additions they made are additions that, I mean, they help you, but they help you incrementally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think people are talking about the Broncos offensive line like it's going to be one of the better ones in the league. I think that's lunacy. Garrett Bowles is a walking holding flag, and he's coming off of an injury. And Mike McGlinchey, I've never been impressed with. He was always the weak link on those lines in San Francisco, and they gave him huge money, bidding against themselves to get that done. Ben Powers, they signed Ben Powers too on their offensive line. Big guard. He's a Buco kid. I don't want to say anything too bad about Ben Powers, but Ben Powers would not have gotten that contract if he'd been a free agent the year before. So I don't know. I don't know if they did enough to really get better. I think, honestly, they're betting on Sean Payton and Russell Wilson's improvement are what is going to float us, and all of these incremental additions will be the incremental difference between maybe 8-9 and 9-8. I don't know. I don't know how they evaluate it, but yeah, the important thing, the only thing that matters is your coach is no longer a bozo, and your quarterback hopefully improves as a result.
They'll get Javonte Williams back at some point. That's a good thing for them. I think their tight end, Dulcich, I think he's a player. He looked really good last year, the now second-year tight end out of UCLA. They've got the same starting three receivers. It's still Sutton. Patrick will be back from the injury, and then Jerry Jeudy. You add Mims to the draft. KJ Hamler, in theory, does exist as an NFL player. And they added Marquez Callaway, who's, nothing special, but he's your fourth option. That's a fine piece to have. Their offensive line is a bunch of dudes who you say, all right, like, they're fine to start, but you could certainly replace all of them. Is that enough to have a legitimately good or decent offensive line? I don't know. I don't know that is necessarily the best way to build it, especially when you're giving Mike McGlinchey the kind of money that they're giving him. So I don't know that any of those pieces are huge difference makers, but I do think they'll be a little bit better if Russell Wilson himself is better. The Chargers, do the defensive pieces and the scheme fit together? I can leave my analysis of this one pretty short. Brandon Staley is supposedly a defensive genius, and their defense has been pounded into dust in the most important game of the year 2 years in a row. They got in that crazy shootout with the Raiders 2 years ago that they lost. Mm-hmm. And then last year, they completely whizzed down their leg in the first round of the playoffs and let the Jaguars rip them to shreds. Jags have a good offense, good quarterback, good pieces. That should never happen with a supposed defensive genius head coach.
And those guys never stay on the field. That was the other thing that Mueller pointed out in the article is Bosa's always missing time. Derwin James is always missing games. They spent all that money on J.C. Jackson last year. Not only was he decidedly not a scheme fit, but he missed a whole bunch of games. So, like, health and scheme fit, I think, are valid questions. They've got a lot of names that are impressive on paper, but the whole has not been what you'd expect from the sum of the parts. And yeah, how much of that does that fall on coaching? That's a pretty hot seat.
I think so too.
In Los Angeles. And when you go into a season with your coach on the hot seat, mm-hmm. that can go south in a hurry. Mm-hmm. If they come out of the gate and they stumble a little bit, that could get bad.
The last one, I think that Chargers one is pretty easy. Like, you got the quarterback, you've got enough offensive pieces. You better figure it out defensively. Otherwise, Staley's getting fired because you're not wasting time with that quarterback there. The Raiders. I kept reading the Raiders breakdown, and I kept thinking that he was making his final point, and then he didn't. It was like, is Jimmy Garoppolo good enough to win you games at this stage of his career? And I thought, okay, that's an easy one. But then also you brought in all these former Patriots, and it's not working. Is that going to work as you continue to do that? It's like, oh, no, okay, that's kind of a bigger picture one, sure. Then it was even bigger than that. They cannot stop opposing offenses. They do not get after the quarterback. They've spent some money to get more pass rushers. Hasn't worked for years. Their secondary is bad. Is there anything they can do to actually make an impact on opposing quarterbacks? So it just kept getting worse in this breakdown for the Raiders.
They're not a good team, as it turns out.
No, they stink.
Bad teams have a lot of problems.
They are poorly run. They're poorly coached, and they don't have very good players. That's what your concern is if you're a GM, is that, oh, wow, I built a team that sucks.
Harder to find, like, what are you not concerned about?
For real.
Like,
no, like,
what do you feel good about for the Raiders?
Josh Jacobs, who is pissed at you.
Devontae Adams is real nice. Like, Max Crosby's a good player. All right, you got a star on either side of the ball. That's great. What else you got?
I can't wait to see what Devontae Adams does with Jimmy G throwing to him. Like, Carr at least has an arm. He's not great, but he at least has an arm. Rodgers is a Hall of Famer. We'll see. We'll see what Jimmy G can do with an elite wide receiver. We have to get to our first time out here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll talk to Matt and Derrick more about the Chiefs a little bit later on this hour. But first, we've got some Change My Mind up next on 580 Sports Talk.
The clue is the largest no reserve.
Change My Mind time, a Friday staple here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Tonight on ESPN, we will be able to witness the return of slam ball. Remember slam ball?
I do remember slam ball.
Basketball with trampolines and tackling and wow.
The worst ACL injuries you've ever seen.
Change my mind. As much as there's a lot of hoopla on social media about it, watching slam ball in 2023 is probably not worth your time.
I can't change your mind on that. I agree with it 100%. Like there are some things like I'm all about nostalgia, and we'll get into a little of nostalgia with my Change My Mind today, kind of. But no, I'm not particularly nostalgic for staying up to watch slam ball on Spike TV. When was this? Like 2000?
Yeah, like
2001?
03. Yeah.
Like I was in high school and I drank a lot of Mountain Dew and could stomach flaming hot Cheetos, and I thought slam ball was cool, and that's not the person I am anymore.
Yeah, the Professional Slam Ball League was founded in 2002.
Yeah, it's not the person I am anymore, and that's okay. I think we all evolve. But you know what? That person is out there somewhere, and slam ball is for them. But I can firmly say that in 2023, I am 36 years old, and that is not for me.
I am of the belief that, and I think this more and more as time goes on, people my age or slightly older than my age, when they yearn for things that were around in like the early 2000s, they were good to you and you think they're still good, mostly because the hardest thing in your life was like being on time to algebra. Like you didn't have real things going on and all of life was easier. That's why those things felt good. I've shared this before. There's a trend that goes on sports fan Twitter. Like every 3 months, there's a screenshot of an old episode of SportsCenter that goes around and 100,000 people like and retweet it. It's like, oh man, this is when sports TV was the good old days. No, you just liked being able to wake up at 7 before school and watch SportsCenter while eating Frosted Flakes.
Right.
Like life was easier. That's why you liked it. I kind of feel like slam ball is probably the same thing. Sorry to be a wet blanket if you're dying for slam ball in your life.
Speaking of nostalgia, I was thinking about sports jerseys, as I often do. Somebody on Twitter posted a clip of the music video for the song Suga Suga by Baby Bash. And in the song, Baby Bash, I think it's Baby Bash, is prominently featured wearing the San Diego Chargers LaDainian Tomlinson powder blue throwback.
Mm-hmm.
I also have one of those. It is still in my closet to this day. Changed my mind. The powder blue OG San Diego Charger jersey is the best jersey in the history of sports.
Oh man, best jersey in the history of sports.
And don't give me this, well, you got to go with the Yankee pinstripes. It's nonsense. It's not fashionable. It's just been around for a long time.
Other teams do pinstripes better too.
Yes. They look better in purple than they do in navy. Just saying.
Yeah, I like the Cubs pinstripes. I mean, I'm biased there too, but I like the Cubs pinstripes better than the Yankees pinstripes. Cubs don't wear them very often anymore. And though, anywho, yeah, I can't really think of one that has a great claim. So at the very least, they are in the conversation and they're right there. I'm trying to think of one that's just as good. A lot of ones that I like are either because I like them ironically or are not well liked in general. Like I love the 90s purple dinosaur Toronto Raptors jerseys, but those are also oft made fun of. So yeah, I would say almost by default they are.
I think they probably have the largest like approval rating. Like nobody's out there hating on the powder blue.
I think in terms of NFL jerseys, the 90s 49ers jerseys are close. Those shadow box number jerseys. Mm-hmm. I think I would put those second in the NFL's history.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue. I don't know anyone who dislikes them. Seriously, everybody likes those uniforms, which is good enough for me. Everyone else has an argument for something, but I'll take everybody at least likes them as proof of that concept. Let's get to a break. Matt and Derrick, he'll join us next on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Ch- Get 6 of you miss a play like that.
His name is Matt.
Are you ready?
My name is Matt.
Let's go.
Let's head to Kansas City, where we chat with Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. It's our Chiefs Insider, with Matt joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick. You can also, of course, find his great work covering the Chiefs at ChiefsDigest.com. Matt, how has week 1 of Chiefs training camp been?
Not nearly as exhausting as I feared. I mean, especially when you get a day like today, with 67 degrees in St. Joe and kind of cloudy. So that did not take all the heat out of me. So this has been a pretty good week. I mean, it's going to get a lot worse next week, but it was a good indoctrination in the camp at least.
When you saw, and it didn't end up actually being this hot yesterday, but when you saw that it was originally supposed to be 115 degrees yesterday, did you think about coming up with a new career plan for a little bit?
I think that about, 40 or 50 times during every training camp. I have a reputation of giving a speech at some point in training camp, which I'm planning to do probably next week to the interns in the communications department, where I tell them and explain to them that they have made very wrong choices in their careers. If training camp does not break them, then I don't know what's wrong with them, because training camp breaks everyone. Eventually, if there's time, you'll be rebuilt, but there probably won't be time.
Let's get to the actual football here. I like the realism, by the way. I appreciate that. I'm sure the interns do too. On the actual football field and involving the actual team, where's the Chris Jones contract? It's been over a week. Where is this contract? I feel like this should be done by now.
I'm with you. I think it should be done. I don't think that this should be that hard. It makes you wonder. Obviously, no one has come out and said anything one way or the other. And the biggest thing that we really got this week, update-wise, was Andy Reid saying that communication is taking place. But we don't really have any indication. I mean, the Chiefs don't have an official check-in deadline today. I mean, it's essentially midnight. That the players need to be there. There's not a specific time. Usually, it's like 2:00 in the afternoon, but they pretty much just let them today. And I think it almost feels like a Chris Jones deadline to just let Chris have as much time as he wants to. And then tomorrow is their day for testing and meetings and physicals and all of that. So we'll see. I mean, maybe Chris shows up, maybe he doesn't. But my anticipation is I think he'll still show up. I mean, that certainly seemed to be the attitude of a lot of people you were talking to in St. Joe over the last couple of days. But why the contract isn't done, I'm kind of surprised, because this seems like it should be something that, even though there's a wide range where he could end up money-wise to be the second highest paid defensive tackle, I just feel like they know all the information. Both sides have all the information they need to get a deal done.
We know that Andy Reid prefers that guys are at camp. He will give the line that, hey, I don't deal with the business side of things. That's Brett's thing. That's the front office guys. I don't deal with that. I hope everyone gets paid. We hear that from him about someone every single year, it feels like. But we also know, and you can tell it from his voice, he wants his guys to be at camp and be at camp as long as possible. So when you include Coach Reid and when you include really the rest of the management personnel with the Chiefs, how are they feeling about not having this done yet? Do you feel like it really is, hey, look, as long as we get him at some point and get this contract done, we're fine? Or do you feel like there maybe is a little bit of internal pressure that, hey, let's get this done sooner rather than later?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I haven't really sensed at this point any internal angst or any concern from anybody about it getting done. And like I said, some of it may just simply be because there's the expectation that Chris is going to show up. Now, there's speculation that Chris could show up, and then maybe he does one of the, becoming the new phrase and everything of the you fit in. I mean, he comes in, he reports, but doesn't really do anything. I mean, and honestly, I mean, if I'm Chris Jones, I might consider it, because there's really no upside to him working out right now and having the risk of an injury if he's trying to get a contract done. So we will see. I mean, you're right. I mean, there's no doubt, with Andy Reid, he likes for people to be there. I think that this year they've got everything's a little bit different, as far as the way the camp is going and everything. They're going to be in St. Joe for so long that I think that, it's probably doing it a little bit differently, and the players do too. I mean, we went through a little bit of this with Orlando Brown last year, and, players understand. They understand the money. They understand it's a business, and they will generally always let their teammates get the leeway when it comes to getting their money and taking care of the business side. But at the same time, there's always a date at which that switches, when it goes from you need to, take care of yourself and get your money to, wait a minute, you need to be here because we're trying to win a Super Bowl. When that switch flips, I mean, I think it's different in every situation. I don't think that's close right now, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, if Chris doesn't report today, then I think that becomes a different conversation, because at this point, everybody seems to think he's going to be there.
Our guest is Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He is our Chiefs insider here on 580 Sports Talk, and he joins us every Friday at this time on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Check out Matt's work at ChiefsDigest.com. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, how, if at all, is the field different at this camp compared to the camp where the Chiefs were champions last time? And obviously that was a very different circumstance because it was COVID. So you certainly it will be different in that respect. But in terms of the attitudes of the players, in terms of the focus of the players, in terms of the kinds of things that are getting talked about, the kinds of things that are being worked on, how would you say that the vibe is different with this team as they continue down the path of being a dynasty and continuing to be the hunted in the AFC?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dan, because, even setting aside the COVID part of it, where, because that was so different. And I think that really affected that rookie class in particular and the newcomers to the team. Setting that aside from the equation, I mean, I do feel like that this group and this year's newcomers especially have a much better understanding of the expectations that are on them from this. I mean, I think a big part of it obviously is, they get to interact with them. Not only the media, but they've been able to interact with the public much more than that group could have. This rookie class in particular really seems to understand, hey, you're in a special place. I mean, the expectations are higher here than they would have been at another team. There's a bigger leap coming into the league. So I think I certainly get that sense, even with some of the free agents. Mike Edwards we talked to yesterday, he's been with the Super Bowl team, so he gets it. But he also understands and sees that Kansas City is a different place. And I think that's easier to understand this time around because of just the environment and being able to have more interactions and being able to see and kind of feel everything a little bit. And I think that makes a difference. I mean, I do think it should affect the focus of this group, because I think they realize that, hey, there's bigger expectations than you realize.
Last year's rookie class for the Chiefs was sort of defined as a group by how smart they seem to be. We heard a lot of talk in camp about the collective football IQ of the rookie class. I think that manifested itself over the course of the season as they had opportunities to contribute and they took those chances. What do you notice about this particular rookie class? I thought it stood out that Felix Anudike-Uzomah and Wanye Morris had a funny little back and forth, and they were intruding on each other's press availability the other day at St. Joe. So obviously there's some camaraderie already being built. But what do you think stands out about this rookie class? What do you think will bind them and kind of define this group of guys as they come into Kansas City?
Yeah, it is really interesting, because I think there are some similarities between this group and last year's group. Last year's group certainly seemed pretty well connected. I mean, they came in and they seemed to have built some camaraderie pretty quickly, and this group feels the same way. And you also really there's some personalities in this group, and that's something that the Chiefs have not shied away from, as far as, drafting players. And this is no knock against, a guy like a Derrick Prince that gets drafted, but, that's a guy that goes, or goes undrafted rather, but, that's a guy that, I feel like he's a little bit different. I mean, we talked to him today, and, he's certainly, to me, from a personality standpoint, maybe a little bit like Isaiah Pacheco, although Pacheco's got his own little personality. He could be, I think, a bigger, better character than when he's not on a podium. I think, maybe we scare him a little bit. But, last year's draft class was pretty gregarious for the most part. I mean, they kind of, embraced the spotlight and everything. We're willing to talk. And this year's draft class is kind of the same way. I mean, like you talked about, that banter between Felix and Wanye, Rashee Rice, not afraid, Keandre Coburn, I really hope becomes a really good player, because that guy has got a dynamic personality. Really enjoys the talk and seems like a really sharp guy. He will fit in well with I think Felix and Wande in that standpoint. Because and that's one of the things that I think the Chiefs have focused on when it comes to draft picks is that they want smart players. They want guys who can develop into leaders. They want guys who are communicators. And I think, and they're not afraid of personalities. They're not afraid to bring in some guys that are outgoing and talkative because I think they feel like that's something that they need.
Wrapping things up with Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. It's our Chiefs Insider with Matt joining us here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. You can go find Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick and on his website, ChiefsDigest.com, for all of his tremendous work covering the Chiefs. From a business perspective, Matt, anything really stand out to you from what Mark Donovan had to say earlier today, the Chiefs president?
Yeah, probably a few things. One, I think we got the clearest, at least communication from anybody who wasn't Clark Hunt that the Chiefs' preference is to stay at Arrowhead. I mean, they would love to be able to stay in Arrowhead to renovate and upgrade that facility. The question is going to be, is it going to be cost feasible and make sense? I mean, depending on how long that they want to stay there. Mark told us today, hey, the infrastructure is probably there to stay in Arrowhead for a long period of time, but acknowledging there's going to be a significant investment annually that would require them to, if they wanted to stay in Arrowhead. But all the options are on the table. I mean, building a brand new stadium at that site or building a new stadium elsewhere are on the table. I mean, there's nothing that's been ruled out yet for the Chiefs. Big part of it's going to depend on the Royals and where they end up. So they want to figure out where that's going to be at this point. And, we got a little bit more clarity into what's going to happen with the World Cup in 2026. They're really going to make sure that they don't disrupt Chiefs fans, that the Chiefs fans still have their regular seats and they're not going to be displaced. And Mark seemed to suggest that they might have figured that out. But I also thought it was another phrase that he shared with us was that, from the business side, right now this team is experiencing unprecedented success. They've really never been here. And as far as just, their popularity with the revenue streams and everything that's coming in right now. And, and I asked Clark Hunt a very similar question back at the Super Bowl, that was this the golden age of the Chiefs from off the field. And, and he's like, yeah, probably so. I mean, even though the 60s were really big and everything like this, the money is just, so much different and there's such a bigger audience that, yeah, I mean, this is probably the most profitable and most successful this franchise has ever been. And right now, I mean, everything that they seem to touch is working very well for them.
Matt Derrick covers the Kansas City Chiefs, and he does so better than absolutely anybody else over at ChiefsDigest.com. You can also get your Matt Derrick fix on Twitter. Go follow at Matt Derrick, and he joins us every Friday at this time for our Chiefs Insider on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. Matt, thank you so much for the time. As always, we appreciate it greatly. Stay as cool as you can, and we'll talk to you next week.
I will do my best and can't wait. Take care, everybody.
That's Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. Absolutely fantastic coverage of the Kansas City Chiefs from Kansas City and from St. Joe as camp gets underway. And coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, we will hear from that aforementioned Mark Donovan press conference. He spoke for quite a while earlier today, late this morning, early this afternoon, about what's going on the business side with the Chiefs. Prep for the World Cup. What is the future of Arrowhead Stadium? What about the Germany game? How is the team feeling about that? That's all coming up as we lead off the 4 o'clock hour. We'll also get to some news and notes from around the Pac-12 and SEC media days. Plus, we've got our final What is Wrong with You of the week, brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. All that, plus your texts and YouTube comments next hour on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, time for the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk on a shortened Friday afternoon for us. We're off at 5:30 today due to some East Coast Royals baseball. The boys in blue taking on the New York Yankees. An old rivalry. I know some of you out there still have your blood boil when you think about the New York Yankees.
I had a general manager in radio who is such a dyed-in-the-wool old school Royals fan that he has a Yankees trash can.
That's pretty
in
funny.
his office. Yeah, that's how deep it goes. I know you talked to Greg Akagi. He'll tell you how much he hated the Yankees. What fun thought exercise for this series. Which team's fans are having a worse time right now? Because I'm not so sure the answer is Royals fans.
No, I think you can make an argument for Yankees fans. I don't remember if I told you this off the air or on the air the other day. I know a number of Yankees fans and have a handful of friends who are Yankees fans who every single day, every single game, they act like the world is over. Like, why do we even play baseball anymore? Like, what's the point of doing any of this? Just completely beyond feeling any sort of positive emotion for their team.
Royals fans have probably slipped into a state of comfortable numbness about their team's repeated losing and history making losing. This is the first time, by the way, saw this on the Bottom Line yesterday while I was watching ESPN, that this is the first time ever the Royals have lost 70 before they've played 100.
I saw that too. Yeah. I said, oh my God, out loud when I saw that.
So this has been the worst start to a season in Royals history. But I do think that numbness has kind of set in about it, where Yankees fans are still kind of in that anger stage where how are we in last place is the overriding emotion that they are feeling.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about expectations, right? Like so much in life. Like when you're the Yankees, you expect to win a World Series every year, every other year, something like that. When you're a Royals fan, post-World Series championship, you just hope the team doesn't embarrass you regularly. And unfortunately for Royals fans, they've had that a lot this year.
Yeah.
But the Yankees have not won a World Series they're probably not winning it this year. That'll be 14 years since their last World Series. It's a long time for the Yankees.
Yes, like historically, that is a drought. I know they went from 78 to 96 between world championships there. Is that right? Yeah. A's were 72, 74 through 74. Reds were 75, 76. Yankees were 77, 78. So they didn't win from 79 to 95 before the Jeter era team started winning. They ripped off 4 and 5 years and have only won one since then. So historically speaking, this is a significant drought for the Yankees. And you hate to see it, but more than that, you love to see it.
An interesting note for you on the Yankees and Royals rivalry. In the World Series era, or at least in the live ball era, the Yankees have won a World Series in every decade except 2. I'm not going to count the 2020s yet. We're only in 2023.
Right.
They did not win a World Series in the 1980s. They did not win a World Series in the 2010s. Both those decades, the Royals won a World Series.
That's right.
So if you want to keep the Yankees from winning titles, Royals fans, you also have to win a title. Doesn't even have to be in the same year the Yankees are especially good, but that will keep them from winning a championship. Do have some Chiefs to get to. And if you're a Royals fan, by the way, you have the Chiefs. Not all Royals fans are Chiefs fans. Right. I get that.
Not 100% overlap.
But a lot are. And if you are a fan of both, your fall and winter are pretty freaking good. So you'll live with that. You can take that. And earlier today, Mark Donovan, the president of the Kansas City Chiefs, took to the podium for his annual training camp press conference. And I think he had a lot of interesting things to say. I was mentioning right before the news break, talk about the World Cup, talk about Arrowhead Stadium. We'll get to that in a little more detail after we hear from Mark Donovan. Some stuff about the Germany game as well. All really interesting stuff. We'll break it all down after we hear from Mark Donovan, president of the Kansas City Chiefs, speaking in St. Joe late this morning, earlier on today.
But a couple things you should be aware of and our fans should be aware of. I mentioned how exciting it is to be back here after a Super Bowl win. We've gone to a ticketing system. So to come to camp, you need to go online at chiefs.com/training camp, get the information there and sign up for a ticket. To give you some perspective, we have not had a practice yet open to the public, and we already have 80,000 tickets out for training camp. So make sure you get your tickets. The other thing is parking. Parking is online. Get a parking pass before you get here. It makes everything more efficient and makes the experience better. We have some additions to camp this year. The university has done a great job of upgrading some pieces of the campus. In addition, you'll see out on our practice fields, we have a product that we invested in a couple years ago to upgrade tailgating at Arrowhead. They're called tailgate suites. And we rolled 2 of them up here from the stadium at the back end of the field this year. So you'll see a new product out there. It's a great way to have a VVIP experience at training camp, and we're excited for our fans to see that. All that information is also on our website. And then the final piece I would say, which I say every year, is we have a free app. It's a mobile app. It's also on our website. Please go download that. If you're planning on coming to training camp, it is the best way to be in the know as to everything that's happening that day. We want the experience to be a really good one. With weather in the summer, sometimes things change. If you enable the push notification, you're going to get up to the minute information on how your day may be effective in a good way or a bad way. When we do get storms, obviously we move inside, and unfortunately it's impossible to take care of the fans inside. So we want you to be aware of everything before you get here. Here's back to my point on having a great fan experience. 5 to 6, maybe 7,000 people is about the max you can put in here to have a good experience based on the way we're set up now. So we'll cap every day. We have a number of days that are sold out. Our season ticket member days are sold out already. As you know well, we're pretty focused on data. There's also a no-show rate every single day, so we factor that into how many tickets are out there. But you know, this will probably be the highest attended camp in our history.
Right. Mark, it's your 10th camp here with Andy, and I just wonder if you might be able to get your arms around how to describe what he's done in this time and how we expect such a change.
Yeah, I'd go back to the interview process in Philadelphia. He's done what we expected him to do and more. He's a process-oriented, proven winner. And he brought process, he brought stability, he brought experience, and he clearly brought results. So it's been, I say this all the time, it's a really, really special time to be part of the Chiefs organization. It's a really, really special time to be part of our fan base. And internally, like, we appreciate it too. We don't take it for granted. And Andy's a big, big part of that.
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, not to fix anybody before, but I mean, the contrast in what this means, I mean, to be at this time in Chiefs history, marketing-wise, strategy-wise, I mean, what does that enable you to do also with Patrick, obviously? Yeah,
I think you look at the talent on our team, you look at the success we've had on the field, that's the unprecedented part, right? We've never, when you really look back at the history of this franchise, you've never had this success. We've had superstars, clearly, but as the world has changed and as it's gotten smaller and smaller, our superstars are now worldwide superstars. One of the reasons we're being so aggressive with Germany and Mexico to grow even more. We haven't, I always cite Lamar. You know, one thing you learn when you come into this organization is the humility of Lamar Hunt. And trying to figure out a way to be humble, but also be proud of the success on the business side is unprecedented. And we're in places we've never been. We've seen results we've never had. And that's all great. The focus is still the same. How do we deliver the absolute best fan experience every single time? And it's all related, right? Having Patrick and Kelsey and Chris and having that team, having a Hall of Fame coach, having the experience at GHA Field. I mean, there's nothing like it, but it's our job to make sure that's that every single time.
Yeah, the Royals ownership is that they're going to cost you about the year, 5 years. What are those conversations been like, and you guys have done to work on a plan for when the
Yeah, so I'll try to cover a lot there because I know it's an important subject. To answer your question, the partnership with the Royals has been great, and it's really, really critical to both of us that we have a good partnership as we go through the decision-making process. We've been consistent in every time we've spoken that it is a process, and it's a really important process, and we're still in the process, but we're making progress. I want to be consistent and reiterate something that Clark said last time he spoke on this. You know, if everything plays out the way we think it's going to play out, our preference for us is to upgrade and renovate the stadium at Arrowhead and make GHA Field even better. We've gone through the progress and made some progress there. There are still 3 viable options on the table, and we've got to do the due diligence on renovate, upgrade, build new on site, or build new somewhere else. So all 3 of those options are still part of our dialogue. We've learned a lot in this process. The good news is we think the building itself is actually structurally pretty sound, which gives us the opportunity. Having said that, we've learned that it's going to take a significant annual investment to keep that building structurally sound. And the other thing we've learned on the good and the bad is just like any project, right? There are certain days when you get that phone call, it's like, hey, we just found this. Might be an issue, right? And when you're talking about a core sample of cement that was poured in 1970, those issues they could be significant and they could factor into the decision. So headed towards doing what we want to do, making good progress towards that. Still a lot of work to do and still a lot of due diligence to do. As it relates to the Royals and their decision, obviously that factors in as well, right? So if and when they go, then that creates opportunity for us. Well, what does that mean, right? And it gets really complicated. You got a sports complex now that has one tenant. How do you deal with that? You got a sports authority. I will say this, in addition to our communication with the Royals, which is pretty consistent, we're obviously talking to the mayor, to the governor, to the county, to the sports authority, and they're all in the loop on what we're doing and how we're doing it, and very supportive.
If the Royals did move to Clay County, how does that change things for you guys? To be on your own, to extend the tax? Thought about that part? Yeah,
I mean, we've thought about all of it. So I say that jokingly, but the reality is you got to be prepared to be flexible and be able to pivot. And that's a big one, right? Because all of a sudden that brings in, as you brought up, what happens to extend, because now it's 2 different counties, and what happens to the sports complex. So all those things play into it, and then the timing to do it as well. So we are on plan to be ready for April vote, if that makes sense for us. If the Royals decide to stay in Jackson County, then we have discussions about how we do that together. If they go, then that is a variable. We got to be ready to either continue on that path or pivot. Our team has done a really good job at just being ready, and I feel like we're pretty well prepared for whatever happens.
Could there be a relationship between whatever the Chiefs end up doing and what you have to do for the World Cup?
Yeah. So it's yes, but the timing is very interesting, right? 31 is the end of the lease. All the work on the World Cup has to be done 24, 25, 26. Then you got 27, 28, 29, 30. So it's a little bit of like, that would be really fast forwarding everything to try to tie it all together. The question then becomes, what are we going to do for the World Cup to be compliant to host that amazing event that potentially we could keep or benefit from or not have to redo? Versus we've got to make the building requirement proof for World Cup, and we got to do that absolutely perfect. We also have to play a football season pretty quickly after that. And we want our fans to have the best possible experience. So we can't really sacrifice the football experience because we did some things for World Cup. So it's a huge puzzle piece for our operations team. Again, we have a really talented team around us, and they are really well prepared for it. It's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a 3 or 4 year challenge as we roll this out. But we've got a good plan, and we've got good options. We got some areas we can pivot. We're working with FIFA very closely, and obviously a great local organizing committee, and they're well aware of the challenges that come with that. But I think the more we've looked at it, the less I think there's ways to really take too much advantage of it because of the timing.
You're still planning on having the same number of seats in the lower bowl during all those football seasons, correct? You're going to come back for preparation for the World Cup. That's not changed. Yeah,
you guys should hear this. This is one of the first things that Clark said to us. We need to host the World Cup because of what it is and what it can do for this region. And we need to make sure that every single Chiefs fan has the exact same experience in 24, 25, 26, and 27. So figure it out. Well, that's the talented team we have around us. We feel like we actually do. It's going to be a challenge to get there, but that's how we're approaching.
It's safe to say there'll be more of an effect on your kids, like summer events. Is that where you're going to probably?
Yeah. That's you think about this summer, right? Think about this year. We go from unprecedented number of AFC Championship games in a row to Super Bowl, to Super Bowl parade, to NFL draft, which, from a pride standpoint, both sides. Yeah, I was just so proud that we showed the NFL how special Kansas City is and how special our fans are. But I was also, proud of the NFL for bringing it to Kansas City and what it did for the league. It's raised the bar. You go from that to World Cup is in the middle of all that, right? Then you put Luke Combs on the stage. You put Taylor Swift on the stage twice. You got Billy Joel coming up. You got Beyonce coming up. I'm forgetting one. But think about a summer when you don't have that because you're in the middle of construction for World Cup. So we got to factor that into it as well. I mention all that because I think it reiterates the commitment that the Hunt family has made to this region. Right? When you look at the opportunity to host World Cup, it will be an economic driver that we have never seen as a region, ever. It'll have long-lasting international benefit for us as a city and as a region. When I look at the business evaluation, should we host a World Cup or should we keep doing what we're doing? When Clark evaluates my job, I sort of joked with him when we looked at him, like, okay, we can do this and we should do this. But this is what you judge me on. I can't be held to the same standard. We won't have a whole summer or two of events. So it's a bit of a balance, right? But at the end of the day, I know we've said this about parades and we said this about the draft, right? Biggest event Kansas City's ever seen, and we hit it out of the ballpark. World Cup is unprecedented when it comes to that. It's going to be the biggest thing this whole region's ever seen by a lot.
Matt, Mark, speaking of the World Cup and all the events listed off that have taken place in the last year, that successful stretches back into 2019 when the break took place. Just speak to the moment Kansas City really had as opposed to these worldwide events in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I related to it's a special time to be part of the Chiefs organization, right? Special time to be a Chiefs fan. It's also a really special time to be part of this community. We're proud of being a part of the community and being a contributor to the community. But Kansas City's on a really, really good trend when you look at what we're doing. And you think about World Cup and what it'll do for sporting, what it'll do for their facility. Talking to Dr. Kennedy, think about, all the additional benefits of a World Cup. This campus is potentially a training site for another team. And again, I would relate to you that when we get to the World Cup, potentially multiple countries will be basing their teams in Kansas City, and the impact of those fans. These people come for a month and post up, and they travel from that city to the various matches. So it's a great opportunity, and it's a great time to be part of Kansas City.
Last one here.
what kind of work and preparation has to be done to be ready for the Germany game? And then what kind of opportunity does that present you all?
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. I'll start there. It's a huge opportunity for us. It fits perfectly into our strategy. We've been committed to growing the brand internationally for a number of years now, and we targeted Germany early on. We were pretty disappointed last year that we weren't the first team to play over there. But when you look at it strategically, and our marketing folks have schooled me on this, like it actually plays out better to be the second. Everyone saw just how big it was last year. We've been in Germany for 3 years now, 2.5 years now. We went from being just another brand to being the number one team in Germany on Instagram in the NFL, which is a significant point. We have had multiple trips over there, both activating marketing. So we did, to give you some perspective on how big we are in Germany now, we did a schedule release party in Germany 2 weeks after the schedule was out. And it was completely sold out. I mean, we had 150 people at this bar and they were excited to be there. So it just gives you some perspective how excited they are. And then to have a game there. To answer your second question, or second part of that question, from a travel perspective, we've got pretty good experience. Obviously, London, I think in 14. We'll go a day early. We won't go a full week early. So we've got a good plan in place. We actually have people in Germany today, the last few days, doing some finals, our second trip as a prep trip to see how we're getting from hotel to field and practice and stadium and everything else. So the league does a really good job on that in giving us the resources, but then it's up to us to execute.
So that is Chiefs team president Mark Donovan speaking earlier today at Chiefs training camp in St. Joe. I'm going to be honest with you. I would love a trip to Germany just to figure out how to move a couple of buses from a hotel to a stadium. That sounds great. I would like to sign up for that job.
A little logistics trip? Yeah. Sign me up.
Yeah. Part 2 planning trip for the logistics. Yeah, okay. All right. Everywhere in the entire world is mapped. Like, we've got time and projections for everything. You could do that from Kansas City.
You could just open up Google Maps, draw some lines.
Yeah, where do we need to go? Oh, yeah, we're going to have all these streets blockaded anyway.
Google Maps and MS Paint. Beep, boop, boop.
Just say you want to go take a trip. I would also want to do the trip. That sounds wonderful. Real quick, a couple of thoughts on what Mark Donovan had to say. Bigger deal. Prepping for a bigger deal of what he said today. Getting Arrowhead Stadium and everything around Arrowhead Stadium ready for the World Cup, or actually planning for the future of Arrowhead Stadium as a football field?
I think the bigger deal is certainly the long-term future as far as Arrowhead's place as the home of the Chiefs. And I think that the World Cup's going to be a massive deal. It's going to be great for Kansas City to host these events. It's going to be awesome to have that international spotlight for Kansas City and for Arrowhead Stadium. And they, of course, have to get that right. But you heard him talk about what Clark Hunt made sure to make very clear to the people in charge is we got to get this right for 2026. But also, every Chiefs fan that comes in from 24 to 25 to 26 and 27 has to have the exact same experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know where their bread is buttered, and they're not going to do anything that is going to detract from what has been one of the great home field experiences, home field advantages in football. And where it goes from here, I think, is interesting, because I think there's a lot to say for the idea of, particularly if the Royals and Kauffman Stadium are not long for the Truman Sports Complex,
mm-hmm.
the idea that you could turn that into a year-round destination that you could continue to remodel and retrofit the stadium in much the same way that Lambeau Field has been remodeled and retrofitted over the years and remains a football cathedral. We don't have a lot of those left anymore. You know, we don't have a lot of, certainly not in the NFL, those venues that have that kind of history. There is value, I think, in that history if you can do it right. I mean, the building's falling down, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
But if you take good care of the place and you do it right, because of what that building means and the memories and the history that are on that site, the potential to develop in the site, and the importance of tailgate culture to the Chiefs and to football in Kansas City, and the value of having wide open spaces around the stadium in which to tailgate. Like that matters. That's important to the Chiefs as much as it's important to, more so than it's important to maybe any other franchise. So I still think that's the most important thing the Chiefs have to get right. Is I think it benefits them, almost behooves them. If the Royals are going to move, turn the Truman Complex into literally a Chiefs kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I assume that will be approximately the name of that area once it's done. I will say, more than anything, I appreciate the way the Chiefs, for now, are handling the stadium situation more than the Royals. Whereas the Chiefs are saying, hey, we want to stay here. We want to make this work. We'd like to stay at the Truman Sports Complex. If we need to tear down and rebuild here, we will. We would also be open to going somewhere else, but we want to stay here. Much better than John Sherman buying the team and immediately trying to tear down a stadium that could be fixed and saying, let's just get out of here. One feels a lot more cash grabby than the others, but I think we all are kind of at that stage when it comes to the Royals' new ballpark project right now. We will transition to some college football talk a little bit later on this hour, but first, after this commercial break, we'll find our weekly champion in What Is Wrong With You right here on 580 Sports Talk.
What the hell?
What the hell?
It is time to find our What Is Wrong With You weekly champion here on 580 Sports Talk. Our current winner for the week, the speeding sheriff's deputy, the chief sheriff's deputy of Henry County, Georgia, in a 35-mile-an-hour zone, blew 96 this past week. That is 61 miles an hour over the speed limit. The officer who pulled him over radioed in and said, hey, I got the chief sheriff's deputy here. He was going 61 over. What do I do? And when he was told, hey, you made the stop, it's your call, he said, well, I don't like this guy, so I'm going to write him up, which is very funny and honestly a personal hero of mine. Big fan of this guy. You want to go first or should I go first today?
I'll go first since there's some build up to yours, it appears. So let's go ahead and get through mine. We are going to Monmouth County in New Jersey, where a 67-year-old man was charged with robbing a bank after a teller at a different bank nearby refused his demand for cash. What we have here is a story of perseverance. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Ivan Sebastianow of Howell allegedly walked into the Wells Fargo in Lakewood on June 30th and handed the teller a note demanding money. And the teller said, nah, man. So he left the bank and proceeded to walk across the intersection to the TD Bank. At the second bank, Sebastianow allegedly repeated the process and handed the teller a note demanding money. This teller was a little more permissive, handing over $1,500 cash, and the robber left the bank. Stafford Smith, the Captain Gregory Stafford Smith of Township Police, said an investigation later determined that Sebastianow matched the description of a man who days later robbed another bank in Old Bridge on July 6th. Sebastianow was charged with 3 counts of second-degree bank robbery and held ahead of a court hearing. So even though he didn't get any money out of that first bank robbery attempt, he's still being charged for it.
Honestly, I feel like if you're only going to get $1,500, it really wasn't worth it. Like, if you're going to hold up a bank, you've got to get more than that. So I don't blame him for going for the third one here. I get the process. Now, I wouldn't do it, but I get the process. Have you noticed we've had a number of stories in recent vintage that have included tellers or bank personnel saying, no,
yes,
we're not going to give you money, and it not leading to anything dangerous?
Yeah, we have emboldened bank tellers. I think people kind of know who's about it and who's not.
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain level of like desperation and scariness, at which point you probably just do what they tell you to do and hand it over. But if it's a 67-year-old dude hands over a note that says, give me all your money. Yeah, I think my response would be, nah, I'm not going to do that. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to come over this railing, old man? Come and get some. But hey, undeterred.
Yeah.
He walked down the street and tried and was successful. Let this be a lesson to all.
I appreciate the persistence.
I need Aaliyah soundtracking this this story. If at first you don't succeed, just dust yourself off and try again.
My What Is Wrong With You story is going to take us overseas, where this story is gross. Just so you're aware.
Man, what?
We're going to Southeast Asia.
No!
You know, it is sometimes a joke, sometimes a very serious thing. A lot of men wish they had a little more size. And I'm not talking about their height. I'm not talking about their weight. You know what kind of size I mean. And if you've ever been to like any website and didn't have a pop-up blocker turned on, you've seen advertisements for ways to, achieve that. So we're headed to Southeast Asia, where we meet a man who put his genitalia in a red ant's nest, believing it was going to help him grow the size of his genitalia.
I'm going to throw up.
A man forced his genitals into a red ant's nest before collapsing in agony in harrowing footage that has since circulated on the internet. We are not going to share this on the YouTube stream, just so you know. Prompting a doctor to issue an urgent warning amid concerns that others may also attempt the eye-watering penis enlargement trick. In the clip, which according to express.co.uk is too disturbing for them to share, the man opts for a drastic strategy in an apparent bid to treat his own erectile dysfunction by putting his genitals, his everything, into a nest of red weaver ants at his home.
The twig and the berries.
For what it's worth, I'm calling every exterminator in my town if there are red ants at my house. Everyone within 100 miles, I want them there to get rid of these red ants. No, thank you.
Yeah, terrifying.
Unable to bear the stinging, the man washed the insects off with water and then tried again and collapsed in pain and agony on the second attempt.
So he's not
smart.
He's certainly not that. So the gentleman is not able to rise to the occasion. Shall we say? And so he thought, no, I know what I'm going to do. I know how to. I know a way around this. I'm going to cause swelling to that part of my body in a different way. I'm going to put my penis around these red ants.
He ended up with
in and around these red ants.
Swollen blisters.
I bet he did.
By the way, I said Southeast Asia because I couldn't find which country this was in. This was in Thailand. Speaking to local media, Dr. Soranai Anwan, who is a doctor at the Health Me Clinic in the Chiang Mai province in Thailand, warned the public to not mimic this dangerous treatment. No duh. Part of his explanation reads, the act shown in the videos was not correct and is ineffective, and then listed some actual ways that a male might want to treat ED, including talking to a medical professional.
Not including getting bitten by red ants.
Yeah.
This might be the most disgusting thing we've ever done on What Is Wrong With You.
It's in the running. It is absolutely in the running. I was not going to include this story. I had a different one ready to go for today. I was just by chance last night cleaning out my Twitter bookmarks. Just like, I haven't looked through these in a while. I probably have something to clean out. And I found one from about 2 months ago, and it was this story. And I said, oh man, I forgot bookmarking this, but apparently I needed a What Is Wrong With You one day. So I figured I'd bring it out.
I don't even like looking at the pictures of the red ants, just like being red ants.
No.
Like, man, I know that they say that desperate times call for desperate measures.
No, I will never be that desperate.
No.
Never.
Go see a doctor. They can help you. Man, you don't even have to see a doctor. You just like, what's that company they advertise on all the MLB TV? They run the ads all the time.
Which one?
Hims
or Roman?
Yeah. All you gotta do is like say, hey, yeah, my junk don't work. And then they send you a prescription. You don't have to go see a doctor. You don't have to say it out loud. You just have to like type it into a window and they say, well, okay, how old are you? How long have you been having this problem? Where do you live? All right, great. We've diagnosed the problem. We are sending you your pills in the mail. They will come discreetly packaged. You don't have to, nobody will ever know. Or you could try the red ant thing. Look, I'm not here to judge.
I am. Don't do the red ant thing. Absolutely do not. We got to get to a break. Who wins?
I mean, this guy obviously wins, but I also never want to think about this again.
That was the risk I thought about putting this story in. Like, I think it's the winner, but I don't ever want to think of it again.
Yeah. Like, it wins the week, which means we got to think about it again.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously better than the cop driving too fast. But I hope we can beat it. I hope there's something in the month of July that can beat this story.
That's entirely fair. That is 100% fair. I am going to be on vacation for the final day of the month, so poor Kyle is going to have to experience this story.
Yeah. Well, we'll run it by old Silent Kyle. We'll get his thoughts on it.
We will be louder and in more agony than he has ever been in before on this program. We've got to get to a timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. I do want to remind you that What Is Wrong With You is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply. They cut the metal you need to your specifications, saving time, money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal at Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. On the other side of this break, we'll get to some college football news and notes. SEC and Pac-12 Media Days wrapping up today. We'll touch on that next on 580 Sports Talk.
Oh, how we love our Kansas weather.
Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk, 448 on this Feel Good Friday afternoon. We're done at 5:30 today due to Royals baseball. You will never believe this, Dan, but George Klevakov stuck his foot in his mouth today.
I don't know that there's ever been a conference commissioner have a worse media day opening press conference than George Klevakov did today. Absolutely top of the charts.
Everybody in the college football landscape, for right or for wrong, and I do think it is in a lot of ways unfortunate because Pac-12 football might be pretty entertaining this year.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. Exciting offenses, some really good individual talents. You got the returning Heisman Trophy winner.
Mm-hmm.
Pac-12 is going to be a good time.
And everyone all just wants to know, hey, is this conference going to exist for more than 1 year? That would be good to know. And considering all the talking that Klevakov and others have done over the last year plus, you would think they'd want to get the big news story out of the way and, get a media deal and get proof that the conference is going to exist next year out of the way. Well, when asked about and when commenting today at Pac-12 Media Day about the future media deal for the conference, here's what George Klevakov had to say. Quote, "Our schools are committed to each other and to the Pac-12. We'll get our media rights deal done. We'll announce the deal. I think the realignment that's going on in college athletics will come to an end for this cycle. The truth is we've got bigger fish to fry. There are incredible opportunities and also challenges in front of college athletics, and I need to be able to work with all my colleagues in Division I, and particularly in the A5, the Autonomy 5, and we'll do that. We'll move past all the bitter squabbling of the last year, and we'll work together to make college athletics better. This is not time for kumbaya, you dunce. You've got to figure out if you have a conference. Your literally job is on the line.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Later, he would go on to say, when asked directly about the lack of an announcement of a media deal, which, again, remember, they were supposed to be a year earlier to market than the Big 12, and the Big 12 has their long-form contract done. Not their, white paper, short-form agreement. The long form is done.
On real networks.
Yes, on real linear networks. A substantial linear over-the-air presence, in addition to the streaming presence that ESPN Plus offers. George Klevakov said this: "We're not announcing our media rights deal on purpose today because we want the focus to be on football." That generated a very good follow-up, which was another in a line of about 15 minutes worth of questions and answers that had nothing to do with football to open Pac-12 football media days. And the follow-up was, so are you saying you have an agreement and you just don't want to announce it today? And Klevakov had to backtrack and say, no, I wouldn't read too much into that. They don't have anything. There is nothing cooking. There is nothing in Al Capone's vault.
Gerardo, your thoughts?
There's nothing there. And the reason there's nothing there is because Klevakov couldn't deliver what he promised the university presidents and athletic directors. He said they'd beat the Big 12. He said they'd be $40 million a year per school, and it's not there. He said there'd be a significant linear presence and they wouldn't have to be reliant on a streaming presence. It's not there. It's not there. If it were, they'd have signed it, they'd be done, and they'd have something to trumpet and something to crow about instead of saying, and this is something George Klevakov actually said, the longer we wait, the better the offers get. When has that ever been true in the history of anything ever?
I think there is something to saying that, look, the longer we wait, the potential that more bidders come in to play. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that's not because they're going to offer you a better deal. This is like an auction. This is like a foreclosed on house going to auction. Yeah, more people are bidding because it's cheap. HGTV is not going to make an offer when you're looking for X amount of money, but if you're only looking for M amount of money, yeah, you know what? We'll put that after an episode of House Hunters. Sure.
He went from telling those university presidents and administrators $40 million a year. That's what we're going to get. We're the Pac-12. We're the Conference of Champions. And even though we're losing USC and UCLA, that's what we're going to get because we're early to market. We have the advantage. We've got a year's head start over the Big 12. We've got this big advantage, and we're going to take advantage of that. We are going to deliver for you. And now he is going back to those same presidents and administrators and saying, you guys ever heard of Chive TV? Hey,
what if you're exclusively on air at a Buffalo Wild Wings?
Yeah, here, I guarantee you, Chive TV has been on more sports bars than the Pac-12 network across the country.
That is true.
1,000% true. That might actually be a good TV deal. I don't know what they pay in.
Crypto.
KCCO bumper stickers.
Yeah, it's bad, man. And it just keeps getting worse. He's digging a hole that he's not going to be able to get out of. Colorado's going to be in the Big 12 again. I'm certain.
And look, like, we're not coming from this from a place where, like, we're openly rooting for the Pac-12 to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is not, I think that there's this belief that a lot of Big 12 media, so to speak, is rooting for the Pac-12 to fail. No, absolutely not. The Pac-12 is a great conference, great tradition. Pac-12 After Dark is one of the most fun things about the college football season.
And I think more homogeny is bad.
The Pac-12 is the conference of Bill Walton. I like the Pac-12. I would love to see the Pac-12 thrive. But George Kliavkoff has gone in 1 year from saying, yeah, we heard the Big 12 say they were open for business. We haven't decided if we're going shopping there or not, to saying, yes, we have a TV deal. Maybe. No, we can't tell you about it. But we're getting great offers. You had a year to come up with something, and now you've got my girlfriend lives in Canada.
She's really hot, but
yeah,
you don't know
she's super hot, but you don't know her.
Her dad owns the Maple Leafs. It's pretty cool. By the way, the other note from Media Days today, SEC Media Days wrapped up yesterday. Their poll didn't come out till after Media Days had ended. They have 291 people who vote in their preseason poll, which is absurd. And 8 of them voted Vanderbilt in first place in the East.
Which has never happened before, by the way.
The voting numbers, or that they've won the East?
That they've won the East.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's a little much.
Yeah, just a little bit. I asked Jake, which is worse, 8 people voting for Vandy in the SEC poll or 1 person voting for Oklahoma State in the Big 12 poll? I think the Oklahoma State voter really meant it. I think the Vandy ones may have been a joke. We've got half an hour left of 580 Sports Talk. That's up next here on 580 WIBW.
The Breadbasket Farm.
Hey now, final half hour of 580 Sports Talk. It's a feel-good Friday afternoon. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He's Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this afternoon and spending some of this week and some of this day with 580 Sports Talk. We appreciate it as always. We're still taking your texts. 785-272-9429 is the text line number, and our YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. We're off early because of Royals baseball. Pregame begins at 5:30 today as the Royals start a series with the New York Yankees on the road at Yankee Stadium number 2. Is that what you call it? Do you call it New Yankee Stadium? Do you use a qualifier for it?
No, it hasn't been New Yankee Stadium. It's like over a decade old. I think now it's just Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Last year was was it 08?
I think you're right about
07
that.
or 08?
Inaugurated in April 2009.
Okay, yeah. Last year was 08.
Original Yankee Stadium operated 23 to 08. So there you go. Good memory. So the series begins tonight. First pitch at 6:05, pregame at 5:30 on the Royals Radio Network, which you can hear right here on 580 WIBW. But before we get to that, we do have plenty of 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to today. First one for me, yesterday we had the breaking news, in fact, that the Washington Commanders have been sold. Officially, it has been fully approved by the league. Once the lawyers cross the T's and dot the I's, Josh Harris will in full be the new principal owner of the Washington Commanders. And his ownership group also includes some notable people, including Magic Johnson, who is very excited about it, sharing on Twitter that he's loved the NFL forever, is always a fan, still watches games every Sunday, and he's very excited to be a part of the Washington Commanders ownership group. Very cool for a very likable guy in Magic Johnson. Well, yesterday, shortly after the move was completed by the NFL's ownership group, Don Van Natta Jr., who is a very highly regarded journalist for ESPN, made a visit to the Rich Eisen radio and TV show to talk about it. He's covered Washington quite a bit in his career, including recently with all the scandals Dan Snyder has been involved with, and said that he believes now that Josh Harris owns the Commanders, there might be another name change on the docket for the franchise. When asked by Rich Eisen if he thought the team could change their name, he said, "I think so, yes. I think there's a pretty good chance of that, to erase any part of the Snyder legacy, to have a complete do-over. I would not be surprised at all, Rich, to see a name change and a complete rebranding." I think part of me says that this is a bad idea, because do you really want to have 4 team names in the span of like 7 years? That's not really all that smart, I think. On the other hand, as much as I don't think it's a bad name, like if they had come up with Commanders in the 60s, no one would say anything about it and it would be accepted. But they didn't, so people love to complain about it. A lot of fans of the Washington franchise really don't seem to love that name for whatever reason. And I can understand wanting to just wash all of the Snyder stink off if at all possible. So I kind of get it. It seems like it'd be kind of an extreme move. Also, I can't think of any other franchise in American pro sports that would have changed names so many times in such a short period of time without also moving.
Right.
That would be completely foreign to me.
Yeah, it almost is a bigger joke than just having been the football team.
Yeah.
When you keep changing it over and over again. And if you do change it, like you got to keep the colors. Like the red and the gold or the yellow are pretty iconic as far as Washington football go by any name. So I think you have to keep the colors. I don't know what they would come up with, but yeah, like I'm with you. Commanders kind of lame, kind of limp when it came out. But at the same time, we accept things as we go. Like Jaguars and Panthers are pretty whack when you really think about it.
They're literally the same animal.
Yeah. But, they've been around now long enough, and we just kind of let them rock. Like, there are 2 teams in professional baseball, Major League Baseball, that are named after hosiery.
Yeah.
Like,
at one point, 3. We just talked about the Red Legs the other day.
Yes.
I know that was a little bit of a different situation, but still. I still hold that I think Red Wolves would be a good name because they are native to the area. They're endangered. You want to talk about goodwill? We're going to name our team after a native endangered species to the area, and we're going to donate $1 million to their conservation. Boom. Major points right away. You can keep HTTR, Hail to the Red Wolves.
Yeah.
You get a cool logo.
Even the same rhyme scheme. But no, this is all because, after years of people, telling Dan Snyder, you got to change the name because it can't be that. It can't be a slur anymore. It can't be that. And he dug his heels in and then finally in a snit basically said, well, we'll just be the football team then. Well, okay, now you're a huge laughing stock. So now they had to rush something else into existence, and that's how you end up with the Commanders, which nobody seems to really love.
Which was all really spurred on in the first place by the fact that he felt the mounting pressure from multiple lawsuits that were bearing down on him to try to distract from it. Because seriously, if he had just been a terrible owner and not a genuinely bad person, they might still have the same name. It might still be
the slur.
Yeah.
It might.
Knowing Dan Snyder, I kind of think it might be.
That's what you have to be because, there are garden variety bad owners all over professional sports.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just he's a bad owner. He's a bad dude.
Very, very bad dude. I also am kind of in favor of warthogs. I think the warthog, it'd be unique.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mess with a warthog. It'll gore right through me.
Yeah, you go back to the old Hogs lineage
yeah.
of those memorable teams in the 80s. Could wear some more intimidating looking snouts.
Yeah. A pink face mask. Like a pig.
Like a pig?
Hey,
not every idea. We're in the brainstorming stage.
Not every idea is a good idea, but you need them to keep the conversation going. I also saw someone suggest just being the Department of Football, which is so corny, but honestly kind of funny.
It is.
You go with the stencil font, and they would never do it, but I kind of like that. So just do not be surprised, essentially, if the Washington NFL team has another new name within the next couple of years.
First headline for me, let's update you on what was going on while you were sleeping. We've got sporting events going on across the ponds right now. We'll tell you what's going on at the 151st, playing of the Open Championship at Royal Liverpool in Hoylake. Brian Harman, the southpaw who has not won a PGA Tour event since 2017, shot a bogey-free 65 today to take firm command of the Open Championship. He goes to 10 under par for the tournament and has a 5-shot lead over Tommy Fleetwood, who followed up his 66 on Thursday with an even par round of 71 today to stay in solo second. Sepp Straka shot a 67. The veteran Sepp Straka is up to 4 under and a solo third. Jason Day, Minwoo Lee, Shubhankar Sharma tied for 4th at 3 under. Jordan Spieth in a group that includes Cameron Young, Emiliano Grillo, and Adrian Otegi tied for 7th at 2 under. Then a massive group at 1 under par, which includes U.S. Open champion Wyndham Clark, Rory McIlroy, former Brit Open champion Stuart Sink, Max Homa, and a bunch of others. It's a huge group at 1 under par. The cut line was +3, and some prominent players just did sneak inside the cut line. Scotty Scheffler had to birdie 18 to make the cut. Brooks Koepka shot a 75 today, barely made the cut. Same with Patrick Cantlay. Ricky Fowler snuck in on the number at +3 as well. John Rahm is at +2. Gary Woodland +2 today, followed up his opening 73 with a 71, and he is at +2 in a large group tied for 39. So the professional sports franchise of Topeka, Kansas will play the weekend. But everybody is chasing Brian Harman, who has had a 54-hole lead at a major before. That was 2017 at Erin Hills in the U.S. Open. He did not win that major. And the closest he had come to winning a major since was his tie for 6th at last year's Open Championship. So, Brian Harman, your leader at the Open. Women's World Cup going on late last night. The Swiss with a 2-0 win over the Philippines. Spain blows out Costa Rica 3-0. 8 p.m. tonight on Fox, national TV for this one. It's Team USA, the defending champs, looking for a three-peat. They take on Vietnam in their tournament opener. If you feel like staying up late, you've got some options. Zambia and Japan at 2 a.m., 4:30 a.m., England, one of the other favorites in this tournament, taking on Haiti. And then Denmark and China at 7 a.m., more reasonable time, maybe a little Women's World Cup soccer for breakfast, perhaps, if you're up that early. But that's what's going on across the pond.
All right. Quick note on the Open Championship. Halfway through, now that we've had, the cuts, so to speak, who's winning?
I think it's going to be Fleetwood. I just don't see Harmon able to ride the luck he rode today. He had a chip in for a par. He made a couple of really long par putts. He does fit the course well. I don't think he's going to completely fade. I think there's going to be an extent that Fleetwood's got to come and get him, but I think he will. I don't know that any of the other players here have a real big run in them. And 10 under is already a pretty big score, but I won't be surprised if it's something like 11 that wins the tournament.
Okay.
So I think it's going to get tougher on the weekend. Cameron Young played really well today, and he's been a contender in majors. If there's a dark horse further down the board, I'd say it's him.
The World Cup women, the U.S. women tonight in action against Vietnam. I saw when I was putting together some wagers for today last night, there was a profit boost for a Women's World Cup special bet over at FanDuel.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it, and I'm riding the U.S. women to win by 6-0, 7-0, or 8-0. I win as long as it's one of those scores.
The last time these two teams played, it was 13-0 was the final score. I played a different prop with my profit boost. I played Alex Morgan to score in the first half and the United States to lead by 2 or more goals after 45 minutes.
Ooh, that's a good one. I might hop on that.
Yeah,
I think is.
Yeah.
There were a lot that involved certain players scoring and number of corner kicks. And I want to be completely honest with you, man. I have absolutely no ability to predict
the number of corners,
how that's going to happen. I don't even really know how you get to a corner kick. Like,
ball goes over the goal line, touched by the opposing team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not. Okay,
so
yeah.
the attacking team has possession, and the ball is then touched by the defending team, and it goes over their own goal line.
Okay.
That is a corner kick.
Yeah, I have no idea. They might not go out of bounds the entire game. The U.S. might score every single time they get in the attacking half. I have no idea.
I don't love corner props either, but teams that have to defend desperately often give up a lot of corners.
My argument for 8-0 instead of 13-0, Vietnam has film now. They got the tape on the U.S.
True.
Yeah.
No, and
they scouted them.
The manager of the U.S. women's national team, Vlatko Andonovski, did literally say the days of winning 7-0, 8-0 are over. I don't know if he was specifically talking about Vietnam, but I think it was a broader point about how much better everyone else in the world is getting at women's soccer. But
hopefully it's still in effect today. Hopefully that starts next game.
I'm pulling for you.
Next round of the group stage. A couple pieces of information and news and notes from the NFL today as we continue our 580 Sports Talk headlines. Some new contracts and some new signings. An interesting pair of signings from the New York Giants. They have signed a running back to a 1-year contract. It is not Saquon Barkley, former Jacksonville Jaguar, New York Jet, New England Patriot. He never played for the Patriots. He was just with them this offseason. James Robinson has signed a 1-year deal with the Giants. That is probably an insurance policy for Saquon Barkley. James Robinson was awesome as a rookie. Started out his second year decently well, got hurt, played for Urban Meyer, so that was obviously a disaster. Traded to the Jets, didn't do anything, and then was cut by the Patriots earlier this offseason, potentially due to an injury issue, but good for him. Former Illinois State Redbird as well. So shout out to Bloomington Normal. Also, they signed Cole Beasley, which I don't get because they already have about 400 slot receivers in New York.
Didn't he try to retire 2 years ago?
Yeah. And he played for Tampa for 1 week and was in the wrong position almost every single time he was in the game. So I don't really know what he's adding at this point, but good for him. 34 years old, still getting contracts as a slot receiver. That's nice, I guess. But I don't know. He played 4 games last year and caught 6 passes before he got cut by 2 different teams. So, sure. Other moves around the NFL today. Melvin Gordon, former Kansas City Chief.
That's right.
Chiefs world champion Melvin Gordon. So funny.
Super Bowl winning running back, Melvin Gordon.
He has signed a one-year contract worth $3.1 million with the Baltimore Ravens. Running backs are to the Ravens what slot receivers are to the Giants, apparently. They're just going to keep adding guys. He could have been a much better player if he ever learned to just hold on to the ball, which he never really has quite done. He has been good. He's been to the Pro Bowl twice. He's entering his 9th year. 9 years for an NFL running back these days is honestly pretty good. Had a good run with the Chargers and just turns the ball over way too much. But he got a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Kevin Byard of the Tennessee Titans, he has gotten a reworked contract. The Titans approached him earlier this offseason. He had a $19 million cap hit. They said, hey, Kevin, can you rework this contract so that you don't cost us $19 million against the cap? And he pretty much told them to kiss his butt. But eventually they were able to agree to a restructured deal. So his base salary has been reduced, but they've added some incentives. That's just a maneuver to try to get around the salary cap. That's it for Kevin Byard in Tennessee. He is not going to be there after this year. Usually when you have to fight tooth and nail like that to get a restructure, that's not a long-term pairing. Also, one final note, Bryce Young signed his contract today, $37.9 million for the first overall pick.
The Byard thing is weird. He's a
So
good player.
weird. He's an awesome player. He's one of the 3 best safeties in the NFL.
Can't figure that one.
No.
I really can't figure why those sides have been at loggerheads. I think that's a guy you want to keep.
Agreed.
More than the guy you want to stiff. Let me get to the basketball tournament as we continue our 580 Sports Talk headlines.
TBT.
The Aftershocks, the team of Wichita State alumni, were victorious last night in their first round game against the B1 Ballers. It was a wretched basketball game.
Yeah, it sucked.
Borderline unwatchable, honestly. The B1 Ballers ran a junk 1-3-1 trap the entire game, and they subbed guys out like a line change, and you could hear their coach yelling the entire game like they had him mic'd up. They were wholly and completely unpleasant, and I am very glad they lost. So the Aftershocks advance. We've got second round action, round of 32 action in Wichita tonight. Starting at 6 p.m. on ESPN2, the Purple and Black, the Kansas State alumni, are in action against Team Arkansas. That game will be followed by the Aftershocks taking on the Beale Street Boys. That's a team of Memphis alumni. So
that's a good name.
Yeah, you get a little American Athletic Conference action tonight.
Yeah.
In that one. So K-State and Wichita State basketball fans can watch their alumni teams in the TBT tonight.
Can you clarify for me? Because I got the schedule wrong because this schedule doesn't make sense. So KU played on Wednesday.
Correct.
K-State and Wichita State's teams in a different part of the bracket played Friday.
That's right.
But now the K-State and Wichita State teams are playing again today with no day of rest, whereas KU doesn't play till tomorrow.
That's right. At 3 p.m. against the Show Me squad, the Missouri alumni.
How does that scheduling make sense? Wouldn't you flip it the other way so that you have Kansas, the alumni, not getting 2 days off? Well, whoever had won that game, 2 days off, and no days off for the other Wichita teams?
Oh, I don't have any idea, man.
That doesn't make any sense to me one bit. I'm excited for it, though. I think K-State's alumni should beat Team Arkansas. I was not impressed at all by the Arkansas team. Their best player is Hunter Mickelson.
Yeah. The Purple and Black were convincing in their win over DeGuy's STL in round 1. Though I got to say, Marcus Foster did not look like he was in great shape. I think there was a reason he was wearing a long sleeve shirt. But hey, look, I'm not in great shape either. I'm not here to judge.
Hey, Keith Langford didn't look great playing for KU's alums the other day, but hey,
Fran Fraschilla said they looked like the AARP out there.
Yeah, but hey, when he needed to, he got buckets. That's all that counts. Buckets never die. That does it for today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. Let's take one final time out. We'll finish off the week with the final word next.
Looking for something to do to
conclusion. You better wrap it up.
Time to wrap up 580 Sports Talk for the week with a quick final word, Dan.
Final word from me. George Klevikoff says he's not going to tell you where their media deals are going to come in. It'll be enough, he says, for them to sign their grant of rights. That's the important kind of milestone. Translation, we got nothing.
Yeah, the final word for me in the same vein. If you have to keep being told for a year, it's coming, and then the number one biggest, most important day of the year so far, you get told, well, actually, it's not that important. That should tell you all you need to know about what is actually coming, and it ain't going to be pretty for the Pac-12. That does it for today. That does it for this week on 580 Sports Talk. We appreciate you hanging out with us, spending your hard-earned free time, what little free time you may have, work time, whatever it may be, with us here on 580 Sports Talk. We are back with a full show on Monday from 3 until actually 5:30. We're off early on Monday, too. So we're back on Monday at 3 following Mic'd Up. We've got Royals baseball coming up next as they open a weekend set with the New York Yankees. So until next week, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. Appreciate you for listening to 580 Sports Talk.
Hey,